The Netherlands wants to be the latest country to tax you for the privilege of leaving, for moving out. Today, I'm going to tell you what every Dutch person should know about how to protect themselves. The UK is also talking about this, but the Netherlands has been hinting that they are going to look at imposing an exit tax for a while. What is an exit tax and why does it matter? Well, what it means is if you are living in the country, in this case the Netherlands, you've been paying tax as a tax resident, and you decide, you know what? I've been paying too much in tax. I'm paying a fortune, and there are a lot of other countries I can move to. I can take my business, I can take my investments, I can save a lot of money. Why am I living here and paying so much? When you leave the country, they will add up all the assets that you have and say, okay, pay us a tax on those assets in order for us to let you exit the tax system. It's often a capital gains tax, but it applies to assets that you haven't even sold as if you sold them. And so we've talked about this in the past for Americans who give up their citizenship, because that's the only way to truly exit the U.S. tax system is to expatriate. And when you do, if you satisfy one of three tests, you are required to pay an exit tax as if you've sold your assets on the time of expatriation. Other countries don't require you to give up your citizenship. The U.S. is, at least for now, the only country that taxes people full throat on their worldwide income. There are ways to legally reduce if you're an American, but you're still subject to all the tax rules. Canadians, Australians, Germans, they can leave their country, but there's one final bite at the apple from the tax man before they do. The UK and the Netherlands were a bit more flexible, but now you're going to see that they're using an argument that I've told you for years politicians would come around to using out of a sort of arrogance / desperation / confusion that the world is now competitive. Here's the story. The Dutch House of Representatives has passed a motion calling for the government to explore measures to combat tax avoidance, including a potential exit tax for immigrants. Now, I already don't like this because I am the goody two-shoes of the offshore world, and I say no matter how high the taxes are, no matter how onerous the requirements to comply are, you ought to do that if you live in a country, or if you're an American and you're living overseas even, you ought to do what you're legally required to do. And if you don't like it, exit the system. That's what we help people do. We help people legally reduce the taxes they owe, build more freedom in another country, and improve their lifestyle by moving overseas, or at least by building a plan B to where they have an easy option to step into that whenever they choose in the future. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn how we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally reduce their taxes. But the key word is legally. And I've pushed back on some of these folks who say, oh, you can stay in your country and you can buy Rolexes and you can write off private jets. I've pushed back on that stuff as being too aggressive. I think you ought to be conservative with your taxes and play it straight, as my father would say. And so the fact that we're lumping in things like an exit tax on immigrants with tax avoidance, which has a certain connotation to it, as if people are doing stuff that could be untoward, I don't like that, because an exit tax is simply saying, once you're done living in your country that you've been paying taxes in potentially for a long time, they're going to get their one final bite at the apple before you could be potentially gone forever. The motion addresses, the article says, concerns over high net worth individuals leaving the Netherlands. Members Dassen and Greenwis, who submitted the motion, pointed out that wealthy Dutch citizens, quote unquote, listen to this, are moving to low tax jurisdictions and thus avoiding taxation. That is both an incredibly direct Dutch statement, and it also smacks of a certain arrogance in people who eat at bad sushi restaurants are no longer eating at bad sushi restaurants and therefore depriving bad sushi restaurants of revenue. I told you this would happen with the politicians, and they would look out not only to increase the taxes you already pay in many countries, you see in the US and the UK, elsewhere they want to do that, but I also have been telling you for at least 5 years now, they want to add new taxes. Raising the taxes they already have that are already high, not enough. They're going to have new taxes. And what's their argument? What was that book? Was it How to Win Friends and Influence People, where they told you, you can't just jump in front of people in the queue to make it at the copy machine, but if you tell them a reason, people will let you jump in front of the queue at the copy machine. One reason that worked just as well as the others was Hey, can I cut in front of you? I have to make copies. Yeah, we all have to make copies, but somehow people bought it hook, line, and sinker. The same way people are going to buy this line. People are moving to avoid taxation. Right, they're moving to avoid taxation because the taxation is too high, because they're not getting anything for their money. People go to great sushi restaurants and they pay a fortune for sushi. I was in Kuala Lumpur not so long ago for Nomad Capitalist Live. It's our annual 4-day event we host. And before the event, I went to my favorite neighborhood sushi restaurant. I got the omakase menu. It's not cheap, but it's good. People are happy to pay when they get value. The Dutch government's realizing the wealthy aren't getting the value. Now, I had someone say to me pretty brusquely, one of our Georgian colleagues, and they were looking at moving to Europe, and they're like, I don't know, why would a wealthy person want to move to Europe? They're like, I guess me, who makes, 50 grand, I'm in my prime in Europe because everything's designed for me. Everything's designed for, hey, you get this for free, and we'll take care of this, and we'll do that, and we'll do this. Sure, you're not living high in the hog on 50 grand, but you get a lot of stuff for your tax dollars, your tax euros. If you are a high net worth individual, if you're the kind of people we work with, 7, 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs and investors, you ain't getting a lot. What you are getting is people in your House of Representatives talking about how dare you go out in the competitive world and look for other options. So the idea here is there'd be sort of a deemed disposition tax in other ones where when you leave, let's say you have a business. What's that business worth? Okay, we are going to assess the value of that and we're going to apply an unrealized capital gains tax. Again, it's our one final bite at the apple. The idea being, hey, you built this 6 million euro business in the Netherlands, and if you go out and sell it for 100 million, once you move to Dubai or Malaysia or Panama or wherever you're going to go, lots of choices, dozens of choices we've helped clients move to. Once you go out there, how are we going to track you down? And how are we going to know what was ours and what was not ours? And so they're going to say, okay, we think the business is worth 6 million or it's been valued at 6 million. Pay us capital gains tax on that. You're going to say, well, it's just on paper. It could go down. I don't have liquidity from it. Maybe the business isn't making money or it's not making that much. Whatever. Hey, that's not our problem. You want to leave. And so therefore pay the unrealized capital gains tax. I told you the story multiple times. We had a client that came to us in the US. His business was valued by virtue of it actually raised money from investors. It was valued somewhere in the 9 figures, and he owned the lion's share of that. He couldn't afford to renounce US citizenship. He just couldn't. He didn't have the bill. His share was 300 million. The basis was nothing. He started it from a card table, and he didn't have, $70 million to pay. And so what I've always told people who live in countries with an exit tax is you want to get it as soon as you can. I started Nomad Capitalist just as I was leaving the US once and for all. And I started it not even so much as a business. I was just writing and sharing my experiences. People started coming to us. But I, really didn't do any of this on US soil, which is why it's kind of odd when people think like, I'm not paying the country that made me. I built this business while living overseas. You want to be out of your country before you have something of great wealth. Now, if you have certain local assets, a house, for example, what you'll see, is a lot of these countries, that's a local asset. We're going to tax that regardless, right? But if you build something that could exist in the cloud, a business that's not local, for example, or if you have stocks, or if you have crypto, that's the kind of stuff you want to be careful of. And what did I tell you? When Bitcoin was down in the dumps in 2023, I said, hey, I know you're feeling badly, but now is the time to leave your country, because if you think it's going to go back up, and it did, what did Bitcoin go down to? Was it 18 or 16 or something? And then it quadrupled from there, basically. I said, imagine you left at that 18. I said, a lot of you are going to have a capital loss on paper when you leave. Therefore, no exit tax. You have a loss. There's nothing to tax. There's no unrealized capital gain. Move now and be somewhere else when it quadruples, rather than sticking around waiting to be in a good mood, but then you're not in a good mood because you're going to pay tax on all this appreciation. And so that's what people in, I think, the UK potentially are going to face. And now the Netherlands has been talking about it for a while. And again, their excuse is very simple. Hey, we don't like that you have places to go. Think about it. When I was born, how many places could you go in the world where you'd feel comfortable? Compared to now, where we have a series called Live Like a King, where we go to places the average person doesn't think are that great because they've never been there. People sometimes literally say, do they have electricity in that country? Yeah, they have electricity and champagne and caviar and better roads than your country. We're going to keep going and going and going with Live Like a King because not every place is your cup of tea, perhaps, But there are so many places that you can go now that you couldn't have gone 20, 30, 40 years ago. When I was born, there were camels on the runway in Dubai's airport. Now look at it. And so the Dutch government, like all the legacy brand Western governments, they were sitting around. They're like, yeah, we got it pretty good. We'll just keep, tax them some more. I was literally in Sweden 10 years ago. I was kind of joking with the guy on the train platform. I said, oh, you guys, for all your taxes, the train's late, something like that. He's like, oh, you wouldn't believe it. We went from like 59% to 55%, and the whole country's fallen apart since then. And meanwhile, Dubai, which went from being, camels on the runway to being the gleaming metropolis it is today, they get by with zero. Okay, it's 9% corporate now, but personal income, zero, and it's better. And so the Netherlands, they're like, where are you going to go? Gavin Newsom, governor of California, where are you going to go? You're going to leave California? All right, that's cute. Yeah, we're going to leave. Holy cow, they're leaving. We have to go to the House of Representatives. People are leaving and taking their business with them. What are we going to do? The motion argues, here's what they're saying. It's reasonable to expect, here's the quote, it's reasonable to expect them, meaning Dutch immigrants, people leaving, to contribute to the public good. Where did you hear this for years? Oh, this Nomad guy, he's just trying to sell his services. He's trying to just get people to pay him to make a holistic plan. I don't think it's going to be... It's right. I've been telling you for years. When they run out of money and people realize what's up, it's for the public good. And everyone who's suffering, because I don't hire in the Netherlands, I don't hire in the US, I'm hiring people all around the world, and I'm just a little minnow. The economic growth is not in the Netherlands, okay? I guess it's growing a little bit, but like compared to the rest of the world, it's not growing that much. And so what happens? The people living there, oh, life's a little tougher than it used to be when there was no competition, when like Dubai had camels running around at the airport. Rather than be competitive, rather than reduce regulations, rather than make it easier to hire there, rather than lower taxes, now we're just going to screw with you. And then what are we going to do? We're going to tell all those people who don't feel as good about the country anymore, now that they have to face some competition, hey, it's these rich jerks who are leaving, and they're going to Dubai with their supermodels and their yachts, and they got to contribute to the public good, even after leaving the country. When I go and check into a hotel, and God help me, I hate check, all the money I saved, I got the houses around the world, intentionally, because if I have to stay at one more bloody Marriott brand Ritz-Carlton, forget it. I'll give the Ritz-Carlton, the terrible hotel chain, I will give them one thing in their credit. At least when you check out, you stop paying. Not so in the Dutch House of Representatives. This isn't me speculating. This isn't me predicting as I have for years. This is literally what was said. It's reasonable to expect them to continue to contribute to the public good, arguing that the immigrants have benefited significantly from public resources in the Netherlands. I went to public schools for most of my childhood. My parents paid a lot of money in property taxes, which is what funds schools in the U.S. They paid a lot of money in income tax. You know what? I feel pretty good. And then when I became an adult and I stuck around against my best intentions for a number of years, and I paid a bunch of money in taxes. And then when I drive on the roads, I would pay petrol tax, I would pay gas tax. I think I contributed enough to the United States. When you go to a university, you go for 4 years, you keep the skills for the rest of your life, ostensibly. They don't send you a bill every year, like an annual service fee, like it's Netflix or something. You paid once and you're done. And so my parents, and then me, paid a lot of money for my education and then for me to live there. And now I'm done and I'm out. I don't want to pay anymore. And for me, I had to give up my citizenship. The good news for those of you in the Netherlands or the UK is you can keep your citizenship, at least for now. But they're going to tell you, oh, well, you benefited from public resources. When is it enough? Again, you stayed at a hotel 20 years ago. They send you a bill. Hey, wear and tear. I mean, you rent a movie, you're still paying. No, you use the service and you're done. I've been telling you, they're going to switch this. They're going to switch it from, all right, fine, when you leave, you don't have to pay us anymore because you're not here. You're not using the health care. You're not driving the roads. You're not sending your kids to schools. That was always the point. Hey, we tax people because they're using our great services. That's the price of civilization. Now we're going to tax you because you used to use the services. It's like alimony for citizens. Why? People are suffering. People are complaining. Politicians come in riding to the rescue. You used to benefit from the resources. Pay for the rest of your life, maybe. Hey, and what have I told you? Some countries will roll out some kind of citizenship-based taxation. No matter where you go, they will make you pay. Now, if you're Dutch, generally speaking, you can't have a second passport. So what do? Get to a permanent residence relatively quickly, or you get a permanent residence permit. And once you're at a permanent residence level, in a true sense, you could theoretically convert that into citizenship in the future. So you bide out your time. Whether you live in the place you have residence or not, you let the clock run out on how many years it takes before you apply for citizenship. Let's say in a place where you don't have to be there that often. And then you don't have to take the citizenship. And then as long as the country doesn't change their naturalization requirements, you can always go back and flip it later. So Latin American countries could be good to do this. You can get a relatively affordable residence permit. You don't always have to live there. You can kind of season the residence permit. Mexico might be a place that you want to go and start the clock ticking on something like that. Pretty strong passport, not quite as good as the other ones, but pretty strong. Obviously not with the privileges of the EU, but pretty strong passport for travel. Nice place to live. That's a residence permit you might want to look at, and you start the clock. And then if at some point you decide, they're coming after me as a citizen, or if they open up dual citizenship to you, then you can flip the switch. You can turn Mexico or whatever other country you have into citizenship. So that's what I would look at, unless you just want to go out and get some other European nationality now through descent or Malta's investment program. You could do that and just say, hey, I'll not be Dutch, but I'll have the same privileges as an EU citizen of another country. You could also do that, but that's scary for a lot of folks. Anyway, that's what the Netherlands is doing, and there's more about this. Let's see what they do. But we're seeing that the UK and the Netherlands are coming on strong. Other EU countries not only want mandatory military service for their citizens, they're also talking about, in some cases, bringing wealth taxes back. So it's taxes, it's obligations, not so much what do you get. When you ask what do you get, it's sit down, shut up, forget what have we done for you lately. Look at what we've done for you. And that's exactly what I've told you. Citizenship is going to become more of an obligation, more of a one-way street. You serve them, they do nothing for you. And if you decide you don't like that abusive relationship, to hell with you. That's what's being discussed in the Netherlands. Let's see what they do with it.